Okay, so my name is Sandro, I'm from London, founder of the London Software Craftsmanship Community, and so I have just a very few slides. So what is the session about? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of legacy code, very small. You need to be very creative, and you need to imagine that has 3,000 lines. That's kind of closer to what you do on a daily basis, like these big monster methods. But of course, that if I had a big one, we would be here for weeks. So I just got a very small code base that hopefully will reflect the majority of the problems that we have in our legacy code. So we will take this piece of legacy code. I'm going to write on the test straight until it's 100% covered. And then once it's 100% covered, then I will refactor and make it better. So just a bit of background of the code base. So imagine a social networking for travelers, like your Facebook. And basically, so it's a web app. You assume that it's a web app. And so if the person is not logged in, he can't see any content. If the person is logged in and is friends with someone, then you are allowed to see your friends' trips. If you're not friends with anyone, then you cannot see the trips. So kind of Facebook sort of stuff, but for travelers. And the rules that I'm going to use is, I have a piece of legacy code, and I need to write the tests. But when you are writing tests for legacy code, the code was not written to be tested. So quite often you need to change your code in order to write your tests. But the rule that I use is I cannot type into the legacy code because I can make mistakes. So the only thing that I can do is to use automated refactorings using my IDE to change the code because that's safer, and then I can write the tests against that. So this is the piece of code. Can you all see it? No, not really. You at the back, can you see at the back? No. That would be interesting. So, that would be very interesting. So, colors and fonts, and it. I cannot make too big because otherwise I won't see it myself. Slightly better. So that's the code basically. I normally don't care about what the code is when I'm starting because, as I said, you need to be creative here. You need to think that this has a few hundred lines of code, and I cannot keep in my mind all this structure. So I don't do that. The technique that I use is, I have this notion of shortest branch of the code and deepest branch of the code. So every time that you have an input in your code, it will do ifs and switch cases. So there will be lots of branches in your code. If I try to understand the deepest branch, I need to understand the entire code base. So I don't bother with that. When I'm writing tests for legacy code, I go for the shortest branch, just understand what the shortest branch is, and write a test for that. And then I go to the second shortest branch and write a test. And then I start understanding the legacy code bit by bit from the shortest branch to the deepest. And that helps me also to create all the data that you need, because to get to the deepest branch in a large code base, you need to create a lot of data. And this data needs to have the right values in each flag so it goes to the right branch. But if I do it bit by bit, I will be creating this data bit by bit as well. One of the problems that code has is a trip service. And inside that method, I have a singleton that will get the logged in user from the user session. So singletons are normally a big pain in legacy code to test. And I also have a trip DIO that has a static method that I will be reading from the database. That in this case will be mocked, but so static methods are also a pain in legacy code. So I will be showing how I can do something with that. So as we're not here to see slides, let's write some code. So that's the the legacy code that I was talking about. Let me just get some water. So instead of trying to understand everything, what I do normally, find the shortest branch. So I come here, see, declare variables, get a user from the session. So my font is too big now, I can't see it properly. And so that's my if, and that's the shortest branch when it comes to here. So I have if logged user is null, then throws this exception. That's what I care at the moment. I don't care what it does inside. So I will write a test for that. So should validate the logged in user, and it expected user not logged in exception. So that's my test. So that's what I want to test. So I just need to create a trip service, and I need to invoke this method. So trip service.get. So as soon as I do that, you at the back, you may not see it, and it's a bit of shame, but there is a bar here. This bar here is called Infinite Test. It's a plugin that I use for Eclipse. So every time that I save my files, it will run my tests. So as soon as I saved this, it ran my test went red straight away. In a legacy code, that shouldn't happen. As soon as, because the code is already there, as soon as I write a test, it should go green straight away. But that was not the case. So if I run JUnit by hand, of course you won't be able to see, but what's happening is this line here. That's the problem. This guy is calling the user session. This user session will go to the HTTP session, so imagine that you are in a web app, and so just for the sake of this exercise, the get logged in user from the session, I'm throwing an exception called collaborator call exception. So it's just for the sake of this exercise. So that means that I should not be invoking this method in my unit test, right? So I need to get rid of this. And the safest way of doing that is, as I cannot type, I can extract just this bit, and I can give a name, for example, logged in user, transform that in protected. So now I have a protected method in here. So what I've done here, I created a seam. A seam in English is this line in here, the line that binds this piece with this piece of my t-shirt. So that's the seam. So that's where the two classes meet, the trip service and the collaborator. So I just isolated that bit. So that's called seam. So as soon as I isolated the seam, what I can do is private class testable trip service extends trip service. And what I do, I override that. And with that, I say, imagine that the user is not logged in, because that's my test. And then I just use that testable trip service. As soon as I save it, my test went to green, as you can see in the lower bar in there. So that's a very simple thing to do, and that will solve like 90% of the problems that you have in legacy code, that is the collaborators, to isolate the dependencies. If you do that, that's a very simple thing to do. So I could move on, but it's very important, at the end of the day we're talking about craftsmanship as well, to look at my test. My test passes green. I could move on, but I won't, because like the test is shit. The reason it's shit is like, should validate the logged in user. So this test is all about validating the logged in user. If you look at the body of the method, the logged in user is nowhere to be seen. You cannot see there. So what is, if I look at this, like, what is this testing? The logged in user, there's the subject of the test, is buried in here. It is no. If you don't mind, I would ask you to hold your questions, because I will do loads of things and change this a lot. So and then loads of things I will do, like, I will do it as a step, and then I will refactor and throw away loads of things.
I will remember it.
Okay, take some notes. So I will change that, because I will start introducing the concepts that I want. So what is missing here is the logged in user. Because that's the point of this test. Okay, and what I can do now is logged in user. So if I save that, my test is still green. So now I introduce the concept that was missing. But I still don't like the nulls, because that doesn't mean much to me. And that's the point that I would go to my BA and say, like, yeah, I understand the concept of a logged in user, but what's the name of the guy that is not logged in? And that's when you go back to your BA, because you want to express your domain in your tests. So in a web app, speaking to my BA, he would say, well, the guy that's not logged in is a guest. That's how we treat it. So I create the concept. Jesus. So I need to learn how to type. And so now I have my guest, and I don't like nulls in anywhere, so I just say whatever user. And I'll create this guy as well. So my test is back to me. So now I'm finally happy with my test, because now my test reflects what I'm trying to do. It expresses my domain. It expresses the business rules. So the majority of you, Java developer, C#, C++, yeah, any Ruby developer. Okay, this is a Ruby convention. So Java folks will find this odd with the underscore. The reason that I like using underscore in my test is that if I collapse my method, I have my spec. And that's the Ruby convention. So for my test, I use this one, because I like it. So that's cool. Another thing that we can do, that I use a lot, is use my code coverage tool. I don't care about the code coverage itself, but as I was talking about the shortest branch to the deepest branch, when working with legacy code, a long method may have multiple points that returns true, or multiple points that throws the same exception. So you can get a false positive or a false negative in your test, because you thought that you were testing one branch, it went to a different branch, but the test passed. So with the code coverage, it helps me to know where I am. So am I testing the right thing? So now I know what's left to test, and I can find the second shortest branch. So the second shortest branch is, so it comes in here, so now I have a logged in user, that I need a logged in user. And when they are not friends, return any trips. Because if they are friends, we return trips. So the shortest branch is, if they're not friends, don't return any trips. So I just write a test for that. So, should not return any trips when users are not friends. So I'm going to do, let's copy this bit in here. I never do copy and paste, ever. So it's bad Zivo. So, oh, it's recording. Oh, people will know that I do. So I will call it registered user. So because now I need a real user to be logged in. And I need here a guy that is not a friend. So I need a stranger. I normally write the way I want to read, and then I start creating things. That's normally the way that I do. So a stranger is a user. I'll just move that up a little bit. So let's say a stranger dot add friend another user. So the stranger is friends with another user. The stranger on trip has a trip to Brazil, because that's where I'm from. So let's create these guys. Let's create trip. And now I need to test these trips. Let's import the trip. And I need to do my assertion. So let me just move this code here to the side a little bit. So that trips.size is 0. So even the user having a trip, but as he is a stranger, my test should return 0. So if I run my test, well, the infinite test is constantly running, so it's still green. And if I run my code coverage too, as you can see, I made some progress. So now I have a green test because the behavior is already there, and I made progress, so I know where I am. Before moving on, although it's not proper TDD, because TDD is when you start from scratch from the test and then you write the code, so we're just retrofitting tests, but the refactoring step is very important, and in the refactoring I look for duplication. In terms of duplication, I have the creation of the service, so I will, let me just save this. Run, convert variable to field, and what I can do is, before, I can move this guy up, delete from here, delete from here, delete from here. So now my code is slightly cleaner. I'm still not very happy with the second test, but for now, it's good enough. So now I just need the last test. The last test is when the users are friends, then I need to return the trips. So I'm going to do the last test. So should return trips when users are friends. And I will, I've got to copy and paste again. So now what I need to do, this guy is not a stranger anymore, should be a friend. So it's very important that you express your domain, you express your business rules. That's why you don't need comments, because you can express what you are trying to do with good names. And then what I can do here, I can say, using the IntelliJ shortcuts instead of the clips. So I can say, now it's registered user, so it's friends with the registered user, and has another feature for the sake of it, to London. Of course that they are not exactly needed to this test, but what I'm trying to prove here, or to show, is that when you are testing legacy code, you have a lot of these things. Like you need to set up all these objects, you need to create all of them, set data in it, and add objects to objects. And then your test becomes very ugly like that. So the difference now is that as they are friends, I expect 2 trips to come back. Right? Because now they are friends, the friend has 2 trips. So my test went to red straight away. The reason that went to red is because finally now I'm hitting the static method in the DAO. In the real world, this guy would go to the database. So I did the same thing. So if I go to this method, it throws a collaborator call exception, just to prove the point that it would break your test because the database was not up and all sorts of stuff. So I need to do the same thing. I need to isolate my trip DAO. So I'll do this exactly the same trick. So and create a seam in here. So trips by. I like to combine the name of my methods with the parameters, because then it starts reading better. Instead of get trips by user and stuff, I can say trips by user. So it reads more like English. So, and I do the same thing in here. Override implement methods. So what I want to do is, when it goes to the database, I want to return the user trips. So I just say user.trips, and that will return the user trips. So my test went straight to green. So that's cool. If I run my code coverage now, I will have almost 100%. Like the code that I'm interested in is 100%. Of course, these other 2, I'm overriding them, so they're not being called. So of course not. But now I'm in a safe stage, and I can, before I move on, I can refactor. Refactor means normally remove duplication. I will move this guy up, because they are not important anymore. The only important thing, I always expect my logged in user to be there. The only test that doesn't expect is this one in here, and this one is important that it remains here. But the other ones, I just moved. So with this approach, I'm ready to commit. I use git. You don't know if you're gonna see, but I'll say git commit unit tests for trip service. So at this point, my method, as you can see, I like having my test methods with 3 blocks. And that's give an idea of the given when then on the whole BDD thing. So given I have these states, when I invoke my system, then this should happen. So that's, I always like to break the lines between the three blocks. And if I have more than 3 blocks, I'll get a bit itchy and I want to refactor that even later. So even further. So now so I'm in a good place. I could start refactoring the code, but I'm still not happy with my test because, like, if you see this guy here, it's kind of doesn't read nicely. And as I said, if it was a longer method, you would be creating loads of objects, you have like loads of setup code. What you can do, for example, friend is a user, friends with another user, and just move this window up. Okay, with the registered user, with trips to Brazil and London. So I would rather read my code like that, because it tells me the story, than on the block underneath it. So I just need to make it work now. As I said, I always write the way I want to read, and then I make it work. So, user builder, build, and now I just create the hello, mom. Start saying class, user builder. So now I have my class, and then I can start creating the methods. If I save that first, Eclipse. So, user builder. So now I can start just creating all the methods that I need. Come on. Good. And as we always say, you either have 0, 1, or many. So in this case, you can use var_args. And then we create the attribute. I like to initialize all my attributes in a builder because otherwise you're going to get no counter exception. And just move that up. So now I create this method in here. That's very similar. User builder. Do the same trick. Okay. And create this one. Cool. And now finally the build method. Where am I? Build method. I like my build method to be the last method of my builders. So I'm just gonna move that down. So in the now I need new user, I just need to create a user, return the user, and just populate my user now. So add trips to user, add friends to user, and now I can just create the methods again. So I like my methods to have a single responsibility, so this one just about creating the object, and I delegate all the other logic that I need to do to other methods. So for each trips user.bound trip, and we do the same with this one. So that's user friends user.bound friend. Okay, so now I have my builder done, finally. And if I comment this block and save, so my test is green again. So I can remove this block. And once I remove this block, I can fix all my other tests as well. I can say user stranger, user builder user, friends with another user, with trips to Brazil, build, I comment this, it's green, then I'm happy. Now, I don't want, so I normally in my test I create all the classes that I need inside the test class, just to make it work, and then I extract. So now I don't need the builder here anymore. I can go to move type to a new file, and then I just move the builder out to the same package. I could put in a builder package or whatever. So once it's out, I can just taskful import, and I have a much nicer DSL in my tests, and I keep the 3 blocks, and then it reads much better. And at this point, I'm ready to commit. So git add, git commit, user, builder, created. Cool. So now I'm finally happy with my tests, and I can move on to do the refactoring. As I was saying before, I have the notion of shortest and deepest branch. So in the test, I go from the shortest to the deepest. That helps me understand. When I'm refactoring, I do exactly the other way around. I go to the deepest branch of the code, because the deepest branch normally receives everything that it needs. And so it doesn't have any dependency, so you can extract that easily. And then your method that is this big, as soon as you start from the inside, it starts collapsing like that and becoming much smaller. So if you look at this, the deepest branch is this one that goes to the database. But this one I cannot do anything, because it's just delegation of the database. So I move on. So what's the second deepest one? The second deepest one is the for loop, is the one inside. Another very common problem with legacy code is why are our methods so big? And the reason is called feature envy. Does anyone know what feature envy is? Okay, 2 hands. Feature envy is a class. So you have class A, class B, or trip service and user. Let's give a concrete example. So the trip service go to the user class and say, give me all your friends. And I will do a logic that is just related to the state of the user. So basically the trip service envies the user. It wants to be the user. It gets that state and does the logic there. Why we don't go to the user and say, user, are you friends with this guy? And let the user do the logic. Right? So that's called feature envy. And that's important to identify when you are working with legacy code, because you want to remove this logic. You want to make our methods smaller. So what I want to do is I want to have this method in the user. And now I'm going to do TDD. So I have my user class, my user test. So may I just remove my code coverage for now. So I want a new method. So I just go for the simplest test I can possibly write. Should inform when users are not friends. That's the simplest method I could possibly write. User. I can use my user builder now. That's pretty cool. Right? So that's the cool thing about building the builders, because then you can use in other tests. That is friends with Paul. Such important. And then I can have assert that user is friends with Bob. It's false. So my test is about, like, I have a user that is friends with Paul, and I ask the user, are you friends with Bob? And then it should be false. So I just create these guys now. Create Paul, create Bob. And now I just need to create the method that I want. So cool. The simplest implementation I could possibly have to make this test to pass is just to return false. As soon as I return false, my test is green. Can just remove the stuff, the imports. So now I have my test running. So I need to go further now. I need to know when the users are friends. So test should inform when users are friends. So copy and paste again. Jesus, I'm doomed. So The only thing that I need to do now is to add Bob as a friend, and I need to change my test to return true. So now Bob is a friend, so the test of course is red, as you can see the bar. Oh, Bob as a param name is terrible. Right, so the user has a list of friends that somehow got populated, so you need to be creative. So I can say friends dot contains another user. And as soon as I save that, my test is green, and my user now has the behavior that I wanted it to have. That's a good time to commit. It says git commit is friends with another user, method added to user. Why do I do that? Why am I committing so often? So I can go back to my trip service and remove that. Okay. So why do I commit that often? Because quite often in a refactoring, we go crazy. Right? You start refactoring things and the tests are broken, so oh yeah, that's fine, I'll go back to my test and fix my test later. And then you keep going, and then you get lost. And then so wow, I changed all my code, I refactored, but none of my tests are passing anymore. So if you do small commits like that, and if you're going towards a direction that you're not happy about, you can always go back in time to a point where you were happy about, and then from there go in a different direction. So another very important thing, so now the user has the behavior that I want. It's important that we do very small steps, like Eric and Adi like to say, like baby steps. So when I'm refactoring, every single move, I run my tests. Tools like infinite tests helps a lot because I just save and run all my tests. So I do one move, save, run the tests. One move, save, run the tests. And I will try to be on the green for as long as possible. As soon as I make a move and I go to red, I did something that is not quite right. So then I will need to rethink what I'm doing, and I'm just one Ctrl Z away. So went to red, Ctrl Z, save it, I'm back on green, and I have time to rethink what I'm doing. So I'll try to make these refactoring. Every time that I do it in a different way, so let's see where I'm going to end up. So without going, so just look at the bar down there, the green one. I know that you guys at the back, you need to trust me that the tests are still green. So a few tips in working with legacy code. So I'll try to, as I move the behavior to the user, I'll try to call that behavior now. So there is this flag, the is friend, and I'm gonna have the flag set by the behavior that I added to the user. So say is friend equals user is friends with log the user. And if I comment this block now and save, my tests are green. So I haven't broken anything, so I can delete. The variable is not well named, so I will just, so that's, you get a lot in legacy code, so variables that are not well named, just rename it. It takes minutes. So one of the main problems with large methods and refactoring code is, as I said, you need to be creative. Like imagine that this if has loads of ifs inside and loads of ifs inside and switch cases and for loops and blah blah. The problem is that it's a single string. What we need is to be able to work with like, so you need to separate the blocks. You need to isolate the blocks. And for doing that, you need to remove the variables. Because the variables are defined at the beginning and they are used all over the place. And then you keep checking now if these, if that. You need to bring the variables closer to where they are used and split the blocks. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So for example, the isFriend flag, let's break a line in here, is just used inside the if. I'll bring that inside. So now I want to get rid of my variables. So I always try to do that. I get rid of all my variables. So cool. So my tests are still green. So every time I save it, runs a test. Now I'm going to inline this one. Still green. And I have this strip list in here that is not used anywhere besides inside the if. I'm going to move that to my if. So when you look at this if, for example now, this is a guard clause that we call. So this will guard my method. If there is an invalid parameter coming in, it will check that and throw an exception or do something else. So in an if like that, you can invert the if and start breaking the blocks. So for example, I could do if logged in user equals null. Throw the exception, and then I can comment this. If I save, I'm still in the green. So I can. And now I have what was before was a single block. Now I have two different blocks. I have one block that does validation, and one block that checks if users are friends and return trips. So I'm in a much better state already. So I always go even further. I start getting rid of all my variables. So even if I make the call twice, because you can ask, well, we are calling the thing twice. Yeah, oh no, I know that, but I'll break it anyway. And as soon as it's clean, I will introduce the variable back if I need to for performance reasons or whatever. But I just want to clean up all my variables and split the blocks. And then what you can do, I want to get rid of these variables as well. So what I can do here, say return, and just return this straight. And if I do that, I'm still in the green. And as I'm here, I can just say, well, so just return from here. And if I save, I'm still in the green. The way, for example, if I make a mistake in my code and put like that, my test goes straight to red. So I do a Ctrl Z, save it again, I'm back on green. So that's how I drive my refactoring. And now I have a variable that is not being used. I can delete that. And as soon as you have a, what's it called? Symmetrical if, what you can do is this. And, oh yeah, this goes away. So now I'm in a much better position. And so this is a very, very good point to commit again, because I'm happier with my code. So git state, git commit, git service, internal refactor. So for the refactoring bit, I'm okay. I would be a few tweaks here and there, but I'm okay. But there is refactoring redesign. As I said before, this is a web app. By the name of this, I assume that this is in the model, right? Or in the mess, like Rebecca said earlier. So my model in a web app should never know about user session. Shouldn't have this dependency of the user session. So what I want to do now, I want to pass the logged in user as a parameter. So now we are not in the refactoring mode anymore. We are slightly redesigning our system. And that becomes far more dangerous to do that. So I'll make a move that's quite dangerous, and I'll explain why. So I want the logged in user to be passed in as a parameter. So I will change the method signature and add a new parameter called logged in user. And as soon as I do that, what happened with my code was all my tests that were calling the method now were refactored to pass null to my code. But not just my tests, because in a real application I have other services calling this method as well. So there will be multiple points in my application that is invoking this method now passing null to the user. So you need to bear that in mind. In those places, you get the user from the session, passes a parameter until you start cleaning up, injecting the user as you go along. So, but this is just for the example. So I know that it's dangerous. So now I just need to fix that. Registered user. Registered user. Here I pass a guest, because that's what it is. So my tests are still green, as the bar there says. but I'm not using these anywhere. So what I can do is replace the method call with the variable. So for that, I just remove the parentheses, and I'll be using the parameter. If I save now, I'm still in the green. And if I transform this method in private, it says that it's not being used anymore. So now I can delete. And as soon as I delete, I can go back to my test and fix my tests. And start removing these crap over here. Alright, so my tests are back to green. And with that, I don't need the logged in user anymore. I don't need these anymore. I don't need these anymore. And if I save, I'm still in the green. And bit by bit, I'm cleaning my test when I start redesigning my systems. So I just remove the... So now that's another good point to commit. Git status, git commit, logged in user, pass as parameter to trip service. So I'm almost there. The only thing that's bothering me now, like every time that you need to extend like that, you have a testable something that says now. This is a trick that you do. This is an intermediary step, so you can test the thing. You can wrap the test around it and be safe to do the refactoring. But this needs to go away, right? Because that's showing that there is a problem. There's a coupling problem in there. So what I want, the way that I wanted to fix this is to inject my DAO into my trip service, and then I can mock them, the trip DAO from my tests. The problem is it has a static method, and without stupid tools like PowerMock, you cannot mock a static method. Like if you're using Mockito, if you're in a Java world, you won't be able to do that. So what I need is an instance method to be able to inject and mock. So I will create an instance method in this case. So I have my trip DAO, and now I'm going to delete it again. So, of course, the current behavior is just to throw an exception. The real behavior would be to go to the database and do something. So I will, for this test, I'll just express what the current behavior is, just for this exercise. But in the real world, I would write a test, let's say, integration test or something that goes to the database, fetch the trips, and all this kind of stuff. So should throw an exception when any trips are returned. And what I expect this to do is expected is a collaborator call exception. And as I want it to be an instance method, so I just need to do something like that. Trip DAO, so create a trip DAO. I want a method called trips by user. That's what I want to have. Let's import a user. So now I create this method in there. Need to have the same signature, of course. And to implement that, what I can do, the easiest thing that I could do is, if I type in the right window, is return trip DAO, and I invoke my static method from my instance method. Why am I doing that? Because there will be loads of other classes that are using my trip DAO and invoking the static call. If I just come here and remove the static from here, I will break my entire code base. And I don't want to do that. I want to do baby steps. So I create an instance method, delegates the behavior to the static. So in the class that I'm working on, I can now inject this trip DAO in there and mock it. And then I will go find all the other references to the static method and start injecting them one after another until there is no reference to the static method again. And once there is no reference to the static, I just copy the behavior into this method and remove the static, and it's gone. So at this point, my tests are green, so it's another good point to commit. So git state, git commit, trips by user, method add to trip DAO. Cool. So now I can go back to my trip service and finish the job. So now I need to inject my trip DAO in there. So to do that in the baby steps, are you familiar with Mockito? Yeah, a few people mocking frameworks. Okay, I'll use Mockito to explain how it works. Like it's quite simple, but you can do that in JMock or in whatever mock you use in your own language. So run with Mockito JUnit runner. So I'm just telling my JUnit to trigger Mockito to use the runner. And what I'm gonna do now, I will create my mock. Trip down. So that will be my mock. So just putting the annotation and running with Mockito, just the mocking framework saying, okay, this class will be mocked. Okay, so that's what it means. And inject mocks trip service. So what I'm doing now is I will create the real trip service, because like the trip service that is in this variable in here is using the testable one. So I will keep it like that. As I said, I want to go baby steps. I will create a new variable that is the real instance of the trip service now and not the testable one. And for now, I'll call real trip service. Oops, new trip service, new trip service. And what this inject mock does is basically it will tell whenever this class is instantiated, inject all the mocks that it has. That's it. So one alternative, if you're not using a mocking framework, you need to change the constructor of this class or add the second constructor and then pass the trip DAO in the constructor, and then you do dependency injection manually. That works as well. So now what I want to do, I still don't have a failing test to justify my injection, and that's what I want to have. So I will go back to my tests and replace all the testable trip service with the real one and see where it breaks. So if I use this real one in here, if I save, my tests are green. As I said, the green bar is constantly running. So this test won't break. If I do that with this one, save it, still green. And then if I do it with the last one, when I save it, bang, it breaks. Because now the last one is calling the trip DAO and it's breaking. So and it's the real trip service. So if I run my JUnit, you won't be able to see, but what it's saying here is the collaborator call exception, that exception that trip DAO raises. So now I'm ready, I have a failing test, and I have the justification to add my mock. So I go to my trip service class, and so I say auto-wired. Do you use Spring? Some of you use Spring? Okay, so Spring allows me to inject the thing if you're using Google Juice or whatever. So that's just I'll use dependency injection from Spring, and Mockito is able to understand the annotations. So trip down. So basically what I've done now, I declared that this class will use a trip DAO and it will be injected by dependency injection framework. And I can go down there in the method that calls a static and replace now with the call to the instance method that I created before. So as soon as I save it, my method is still red. But if I run my tests, the exception changed. Because now it says I'm expecting 2 trips to come back, but I got 0. So what it means is now it's using my mock. It's not using the real one anymore. Right? But my test is not configured to return 2 trips. As we remember, like in the testable trip service that we created, we were replacing the invocation to return the user trips. But now it's using my mock and it's not going there anymore. So I just need to configure my mock to return the same thing. So I come here and say when trip DAO dot trips by a friend, then return friend trips. So basically I'm just configuring my mock to do exactly what I was doing in the testable, and as soon as I save it, it goes straight to green. So this when and things like that, they are BDD Mockito, that's part of my mocking framework, and you can use a nice DSL to do that. But if you ask, it's BDD Mockito. So once I have that, let me just, there's some Okay. What I can do now is, it's a good point to, oh, I'm not going to commit now, I'm going to clean first. So as I'm using the mock, I can now say private in this method, and I can remove that method that is not being used anymore on my testable trip service. So my testable trip service now is empty, so it can go. As it goes, this can go, now this can go, now this can go. And so if I save, I'm seeing the green, and now I can rename this to what the thing is, and not real, because real trip service is stupid. So another thing that I've seen when people say, they call the subject under test, like test T. Don't do that. Call it what it is. It's a trip service, call it trip service. It's not test T, right? So, cool. So at this point, that's a great point to commit. So git commit trip DAO, inject it into trip service. So the last thing that I want to do now is to do just very few tweaks. If I want to move this method up, and that's just now me being very picky with the code, right? Because that's probably good enough. So if I move all the declarations that I don't care to the bottom, every time I do this, I do it in a different way. Well, maybe it's a good thing. So I want to clean this a little bit. So I want to say, let's extract a method here and say validate, and I call it be a private. And I don't like this array thing in here, so I will extract this as well and call no trips, because that's more meaningful than new array list. And the cool thing about doing this, like if I collapse now my specs doing that, if I look at my public method and if I look at my specs, I have should validate the logged in user. Validate logged in user. Should return trips when users are friends. User is friends with logged in user, trips by user. Should not return any trips when users are not friends. If they're not friends, return no trips. I don't need documentation for this, right? Because it reads in English. It's telling, I don't care what my private method does, because they are the detail. But my public method needs to tell me the story, needs to show me the business rules. And that needs to match with the specs of my class. And that's how I write my tests. So that's another good point to commit. Git state, git commit, trip service and test refactoring. So another interesting point is, like if I do a git log pretty, I don't know if you can see from the back. Does it make it better if I do this? So if you look at my commits, like unit test, if you read from the bottom up, unit test for trip service, user builder created, is friends with another user method user, trip service internal refactoring, logged in user passes parameter, trips by user added to trip, blah blah. And if you look at the difference in minutes, like 34, 28, 23, 16, 12, 9, 2, because I was explaining as well, I was talking a lot. But normally I would have like a difference in between commits, probably around 3 minutes, every single commit that I will do. And that allows me, that gives me a lot of confidence to say, if I'm doing something stupid, as I said before, I'm redesigning the code, when I'm going to a direction, when I arrived, I had an idea, I want to refactor my code to get there. Halfway through I said, wow, that's shit. I'm not happy with it, I didn't see that coming. That's fine, I just go back in time, git reset to one of these, go back to where I was, continue from there. So if I could remember what the shortcut in, because I've been using IntelliJ for quite a while now. So that's the original trip service. That's where it got you to. It's not a matter of number of lines. It's a matter of readability, because many of these methods, if I wanted to remove the number of lines, I don't need the no trips. I could return this. These guys are 1 line long, with the exception of this one. But I don't care about the number of lines. What I care is, can I read? That's what I care about. So, just to finish, if you take one thing from this presentation that helps me a lot when working with legacy code, remember this. So, you have a piece of code, long piece of code. Don't try to understand what it does, because it won't fit in your head. At least doesn't fit in mine, because it has hundreds of lines. Find the shortest branch. Just understand the shortest branch, write a test. Run code coverage, see where you are. Find the second shortest branch, write a test. And the third, until you get to the bottom, because then you build your knowledge and the test data that you need to pass into your code bit by bit. As soon as it's covered and you want to refactor, forget about the entire thing. Find the deepest branch, extract. Or look at the deepest branch and say, ask yourself, does this behavior belong to this class? If it does, extract the project method, give it a nice name. If it doesn't, go to the class that where it should be. Test drive that, write the test first, create the class, or write the test first, write the method, put the behavior in there, come back here, replace. And then your code will be and becoming shorter from inside. And with very few techniques, just focus on write readable and maintainable code and test. Your tests are part of your code base, so cleaning them is important. When people say, oh, I changed my code, I had to change loads of tests. Oh, there's something wrong in there. Right? Your test should be the same quality as your production code. Strive for simplicity. Know your tools well, your frameworks and shortcuts. I need to learn how to type as well. Working in small and safe increments. And once you working with legacy code is actually quite cool if you know how to deal with that. At the first instance, it's scary because we don't know what to do. But if you know very simple rules and how to break the dependencies, 95% of our problems go away, because I know how to break my dependencies now, and I know how to tackle that. So it will be fun, and then you can be brave. And as Rebecca was also saying, no broken windows. Try to fix everything that you see. That's about it. So I'm writing about software craftsmanship, so there is a book in linkhub/software if you're interested. So that's it. Thank you very much. I think we are over time for lunch. So if you have questions,